Deductive reasoning is the process of forming a logical argument by using facts, definitions, accepted properties, theorems, postulates, and other stuff that's true in a logical order to make a logical argument. We use two laws when we use deductive reasoning. First, the law of detachment uses a fact, uses one fact specifically, such as being given the information of a statement like if P, then Q. Let's assume that P is true. Now these things being given lead us to the conclusion, and remember with the conclusion we usually use the three dots for therefore. Q must be true too. So Q is true. Notice we must go in the order starting with the hypothesis, the P, and then ending with the conclusion, the Q. Must go in that order because remember the converse is not always true. Let's take a look at this example. Use deductive reasoning to determine a valid conclusion to the following statements. If it is Friday, then the cafeteria sells pizza. Tomorrow is Friday. So notice the fact that was given to us is that if it's Friday, the cafeteria sells pizza. The next thing that was stated is that tomorrow is Friday, the same thing that this statement began with. So that's the hypothesis, assuming it to be true. Then we can go with the conclusion that the cafeteria should be selling pizza. Now we want to make it make sense grammatically, so we start our conclusion, therefore, tomorrow's Friday, so the cafeteria will sell pizza. A short note on truth versus validity. A statement can be true or false. A statement, true or false. An argument, that's like this whole paragraph up here, consists of statements, see, statement, 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 that are true or false. An argument is valid if the conclusion follows logically from the given hypothesis, meaning if it's Friday, then the cafeteria sells pizza. Maybe that's true at Parkview, maybe not. It doesn't have to be true to make this a valid argument. Assuming that there's a truth in if it's Friday, then the cafeteria sells pizza, and that tomorrow might be Friday, we can logically conclude that the cafeteria should sell pizza. That depends on what we said at the beginning being true. Then our argument is valid. Let's look at an example. Determine whether the argument is valid or invalid. Explain your reasoning. If I walk in the rain, then I get wet. Now remember, this statement doesn't have to be true or false for the argument to be valid. We want to see the way that the argument is constructed. I got wet. Therefore, I walked in the rain. So notice how the argument began. If I walk in the rain, then I get wet. The argument began with walking in the rain. We need to assume that that part happens. Then the result will be we get wet. Well, I got wet. That's not starting with the beginning of the argument, I walk in the rain. It might be easier to look at this using symbolic notation. Let's call I walk in the rain P and I get wet Q. And it goes like this, P arrow Q. I got wet. What part is that, the P or the Q? It's the Q. Well, if we're beginning with Q, that's the end. Therefore, I walked in the rain. That is the statement P. Well, what is the way that it's going? Starting at Q and ending at P. That is using the converse. Going from Q to P switched the order of the original statement. The converse, remember, is not necessarily true. The converse is not necessarily true. And therefore, we're switching the order and possibly making an invalid argument. This argument is invalid. Why? Because it uses the converse, which is not necessarily true.